Okay, go ahead, James.
Okay, zero tolerance. This is a PBS. Not so special, but that's usually the way it is. PBS. It's not to
I
say
like
it's.
the PBS things.
Well, they're okay. You know what I'm saying? They rarely are really bad. You know, they're not like Fox things or Al Jazeera or nonsense like that. Sometimes they show different sides to things. You know?
I mean, they give you 60 minutes of information.
Yeah, I think it's full
enough.
60 minutes. It's not like 45 minutes.
That's enough information so that you can go, if you're interested, you go and do research on your own.
Yeah, it's better to do the research on your own, but you can kind of get a sense of, it's important to watch it, otherwise I wouldn't watch it, but to watch it so you know what the average person is, well, not the average person, the person is trying to stay informed is, you know, the level they're at or whatever. But so this is about, they say the story begins, so this is about zero tolerance for immigration or certain types of immigration or whatever on the part of Donald Trump and his administration. The story starts in 2012, and I'm going, immigration in the United States starts, you know, like 1492. Strictly speaking, the United States, it would be more like a little after 1600, but well, actually, yeah, Canada would be more like 1535 or something like that. But the United States, 1600 with the English. And you know, it's been waves of immigration from hither, thither, and yon. And I think the issue should be not so much who's let in, but you know, letting everyone in, but who you let in. You know, like I was at a demonstration where people were handing out butterflies, and they were saying the border should be open. I asked, should they be open to Nazis? Of course not. And then the next breath they're saying, you know, you can't keep kids out. Well, guess what? Nazis and fascists have kids. Are you going to keep their kids out? Or are you going to separate their kids? You know, like, I just kind of think, and this is not a reductio ad Hitlerum, you know, like there are lots and lots and lots and lots of people who are pan-whatever nationalists, pan-German nationalists, pan-Germanic nationalists, pan-Turkic people nationalists, or pan-Turanian nationalists, whatever you want to call that group. There's pan-Arab nationalists, there's pan-African nationalists, and they're all basically Nazis, one form or another, and National Socialists or National Communists. Most are National Communists nowadays. But yeah, I'm not thrilled about letting Nazis in. I'm not. And I'm not thrilled about letting fascists in. I'm not thrilled about letting communists in. Especially the Maoist variety or the Stalinist variety and stuff like that. I don't think people who believe in democracy, and there are a lot of people in our society who don't, but I think the majority believe somehow or another in some sort of form of democracy or other. I don't think we really should be just letting anyone come in. You know, like if they don't believe in democracy, wow, you know, how is that going to benefit?
I don't think you're right.
Okay.
I don't think that most people believe in democracy.
Well, I put a qualifier on that.
Some sort.
Of some sort. Yeah.
Well, for other people, not for themselves. They would like to be able to dictate what other people do. Most people would.
The deal is we've managed to have in North America and in places like England and Great Britain and Australia and New Zealand a tradition where, however scummy people might be, they will stand up when they get defeated and stuff like that. So, and yeah, it's just...
I mean, I believe that there should be the same rules for each and every person in a society. So
Sure.
if population is too high, then each, you know, there's like we've talked about it before,
Yeah.
how here in Alberta, not that long ago, the powers that be were sterilizing mentally handicapped and other women.
I don't know how much they did of it. It certainly was on the books. up until I believe 1971, until the
They did it.
Yeah, I don't know how much you've run across studies on it. Or...
I know somebody that worked with somebody who had that done to them.
Okay. Well, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I don't know how much it was actually carried out. It might have been a whole lot of it. I mean, these guys were, speaking of, I wouldn't call them Nazis, but they were fascists. The people who were in power in Alberta. And I don't use that word lightly, unlike a lot of my fellow left-wingers and stuff like that. And that was from 1935 until 1971. They were... I think the Americans, after oil was discovered in quantities here in Alberta, they told the Socrats, this would be about 1948, they told them you'd better cut out the anti-Semitism, at least the overt stuff. That having been said, I can recall hearing, you still hear anti-Semitic comments. In some ways it's gotten worse since I was a kid.
So what I'm saying is I don't think that anybody should have the right to sterilize anybody else from reproducing.
No, and that's the weird thing, like in strictly speaking, in multiculturalism, if you carry it to extreme, you'd say, hey, fascists have their rights, stuff like. But their rights end with other people's rights, where they infringe on
Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to sterilize them. I don't want to keep them from reproducing. I don't want anybody to have the right to keep other people from reproducing. It's just everybody has to do it in a responsible way. Yeah. So nobody should have the right to have more than 2 children.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so you have the right to reproduce, but you have the responsibility not to internally colonize other people by over-reproducing what your right is. We've got it to the point now where we don't have to have families of 10 kids.
No.
Where only 5 survive
and, I mean,
something
they don't
like
have
that.
to say a person ended up having a mentally handicapped child. Well, they're responsible for their child for life. It's not society's burden to care for their child for them. It shouldn't be. Each person has the right to have 2 children, and that's it. And for life. So if the mentally handicapped person has children, chooses to have children, well, they're responsible for their children too. So then they're responsible for grandchildren, which, I mean, grandparents tend to be if they're good.
Yeah, I tend to think that most people are... I'm not saying it's a huge majority, but they believe in democracy. But grandparents tend to be oftentimes better than parents. But I don't know if that's just that people get older and more responsible, or if it's a generational sign that things are getting worse. But it's hard to say. But at any rate, this thing was saying it starts in 2012. No, the issue with Muslims in the United States starts with 9/11. It doesn't start 2012. The issue with people from Latin America didn't start in 2012. It started, I believe, it was 1965, and I supported this initiative back then, and I still basically do. I think it was Edward Kennedy was the guy who signed it. It would come from Lyndon Johnson originally, but it was to open up immigration. And the whole idea was you only let a certain number in from a certain number of countries, so 5% per country or something like that. Well, that's gotten out of hand. The last time I checked, the number coming from it's not 5% coming from Mexico, it's 27%. And that law has been made a fool of, right? Basically what's happening is there's colonization happening from Mexico and the United States. Yeah, parts of it were taken over from Mexican Empire and stuff like that, but New York doesn't come from the Mexican Empire. So you got a lot of people coming across the border saying, we're Native American. Yeah, the Aztecs were Native Americans, and that didn't give them the right to stomp into their neighboring neighboring areas within Mexico. Just because you're Native American and stuff like it, just because you're Native European and you're Russian doesn't allow you to stomp, or you're German doesn't allow you to stomp into Russia or into France or stuff like that. Yeah, like it's just that way. So yeah, they don't have those rights coming in here. There's a lot of people in the United States themselves who identify as whites or whatever, who'd actually have some Native American ancestry. Tom Petty, for example, looked as white can be, but he came from Native American ancestry. So, there have to be certain standards. You can't let Nazis in. You just can't. And you can't actually let gangsters in. You just can't.
Well, I know a lot of people. I saw, I don't know where it was. It was a movie that we watched recently. They were talking about, or maybe it was a TV show, about not buying a poor family, a goat or whatever for this Christmas because they did something else instead or whatever. And I thought that was funny because my sister, she always does things like that. She'll buy families goats, and I think, okay, but you don't know these charities. You don't know if they're legitimate. And are you buying a family a goat? Are you buying a family that, I mean, you don't know these families either. You don't know anything about these people. And so you're buying this goat, presumably, even if the goat is actually getting to the family, then maybe the family that you're giving the goat to buys guns with goat money instead of goat to feed their family.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know anything about this system, right? And people do that. They'll have, they'll support charities that they know nothing about when there's people in need or issues needing attention right at home, right in front of them, that somehow they don't see it.
Well, the goat idea is actually a reasonably good idea because it actually gives someone something to work with. And the emphasis is work instead of just giving handouts. Because handouts, of course, like a goat is a little bit of a responsibility. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a little bit harder to sell that than it is food that's already on the go. You know what I'm saying? Like, what happens with food stuff, I've seen it since I was a kid, since Biafra, when was that, 1968, and Bangladesh, 1971, 72. What happens is you give them food, and it doesn't even make it to the poor people. You know, it gets, Ethiopia, same deal, what was that, 85, 86. It just goes to warlords and stuff like that. So, most of these places where all of those big famines, when I was a kid, I guess Ethiopia wasn't so much of a kid, I was already about 30, but they all happen in war zones, and that's one of the things, like, you raise an issue, like, is it going to go for harm? And I don't know about goats, but the food sort of stuff, that's what it tends to go for, I'm afraid. So Bob Geldof, who's organizing Band Aid for Ethiopia, he was a fairly sharp guy, more sharp, I think, than he was talented, and more sharp than I think he was nice. I don't think he was a very nice person, but at any rate, he knew what was causing the famine. He said to Gorbachev, "You're going to you're going to stop supporting the Greeks in there, the commies who are destabilizing the country." Well, they were basically in control. And Gorbachev basically said no. Kind of like.
Oh, but I was going to mention this. James actually likes these. So whoever gave these to us when we were going to the food bank, thank you so much. I don't know where I can find them. They're
don't let them get
Poland.
soggy.
Yeah. I enjoyed them, and I thought for sure James wouldn't eat them. I ate quite a few of them, and then I noticed he was actually eating them.
Yeah.
And I was like, huh.
Yeah.
So I could buy this product for James and he would eat it. Because he has a hard time, I have a hard time convincing him to eat beets a lot of the time.
Oh.
And
the beets, they just cause me diarrhea.
Yeah. So anyway, but you've been eating these.
Yeah. I don't know. So I was going to talk a little bit more about zero tolerance. So the big point is, what is the subtitle here? how Donald Trump turned immigration into a powerful political weapon. No, no. That weapon was put into his hands, and he's wielded as something like a weapon. You look at Steve Bannon as one of his advisors, and he's constantly using weapon type of metaphors and similes and stuff like that. No, the weapon was put in his hands. Immigration is a weapon that was put in his hands. When I heard him squawking about immigration right at the beginning of his run, I said, he's going to win. There was an amazing clip of Bill Maher, and ordinarily I like Bill Maher, and Ann Coulter is on there, and she was saying, they were asking, who do you think's most likely to win of all the Republican candidates? She said it's early on, but it's Donald Trump, and everyone in the studio audience was laughing. Bill Maher was laughing. One of his other guests, or a couple of other guests, are laughing at Donald Trump as being a possible, like the Republican most likely to win, and I'm going, wow, back then I was saying he's going to win. It's because he was using that weapon of immigration that was put in his hands. It's the so-called left wing want like total open wide immigration. They've just put a weapon in his hands. It hands people that are worse than Donald Trump. It's going to get worse until people get serious about immigration. We are the last refuge of the refugees. I believe in letting legitimate refugees in. I'm talking about refugees from political oppression and other types of oppression, racism, whatever, letting them in. But you got to stop the people that are oppressing them from following in after them, because they're not just going to be going after the people that they're oppressing where they're coming from, Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, whatever. They are going to be oppressing people within the boundaries of the United States, within the boundaries of Canada, within the boundaries of Western Europe. It's just the nature of the game. You can't let gangsters and gang members in from Latin America. You've got to stop them. You cannot let the people who are forcing refugees out of the Middle East, people like Yazidis, people like Assyrian Christians, people like Aramaic or Syriac Christians, you cannot let the people who are forcing them out, moderate Muslims, I don't know if there's that many of them in Syria, it might be only 10%, you cannot let the people who are forcing them out follow them and gaze from Syria. You cannot let them. You've got to make sure they don't come in. And yes, it has to be zero tolerance.
I just want to point out that James is very much in favor of gay people being let into the country. That sounded
the way I put it.
Yeah,
you gotta let gay people in from wherever, from Latin America or stuff like that. But you cannot let the people who are oppressing them follow in after. It's insanity to just say open up the borders, because they will follow in. They're not going after the gays. They just want to come in here. Doesn't matter if they're the gangsters or if they're terrorists. The terrorists understand, I don't know, I'm not going to say what percentage they are that are the terrorists or people that support the terrorists, but the whole thing is, here's what Osama bin Laden said, open letter to the American people, 2002. What's the first thing? He said, the first thing is to convert to Islam. That's the call to convert. That call to convert is a declaration of war to anyone who hears it and who doesn't do one of two things. If they're the people of the book, they're allowed to submit. They've either got to surrender or submit, or they're subject to war. And that's whoever's given the call. That was given to the American people by Osama bin Laden. You cannot let people who believe that in that kind of doctrine into the United States, who believe that it's their right to give the call to convert to people who are non-Muslims, to a group that's non-Muslim, and that people is required to surrender or submit, or else it is war. It's a declaration of war. You can't let those kind of people in. And it's not just a question of ethics, it's a question of pragmatics. Because if you let enough of those kind of people in, gangsters from Latin America, terrorists from any variety of places, not just the Middle East, but Pakistan, Indonesia, wherever, it will just blow up in everyone's faces. It will blow up in the faces of the terrorists, but it'll blow up in the faces of the people who've been supporting open borders. And understand, the borders will shut down, or they'll be one way. And it won't be the one way that we envision it. It'll be one way for anyone who, people who've been radicalized. And yes, radicalization, it can happen with people of none color. And there will be people being ousted out of the border. And understand, when that happens, and I'm saying when, because I'm afraid it's not a question of if, there will not be refugees coming up through Latin America. You'll hear all sorts of people say, the United States is a racist society. Racist is too strong. There's a lot of racial prejudice. And there is some racism. But people vote with their feet in terms of racism. The Jews were trying to get out of Germany even before the Nazis were elected. They were trying to get out and go to any variety of places. The United States, they're not trying to get out, they're trying to get in. I know someone who's a PhD person. After Trump was elected, a little bit after, he said, hey, you know, like the stats indicate that more people are, Latinos are leaving the United States than coming in. Yeah, you know, those are official statistics, I'm afraid. But, you know, they showed here, you know, after Trump kind of backed off on separating kids from their parents, in a space of a month, 113,000 Latinos are trying to come across the border. You know, like, that doesn't look to me as though the majority, you know, like more Latinos are leaving the United States because they figure it's racist. Maybe 114,000 were leaving. I don't think so. I don't think so. So I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump. I think he's racially prejudiced. Call him racist is maybe a little bit much. There are people who support him that are racist, I'd say, and lots of people are racially prejudiced and support him. But all open borders are doing is just giving him a weapon. Why would you give an idiot like this? I almost said something else that started with a vowel. Why would you give an idiot like this a weapon like that? It's just a weapon for him to get reelected, and people worse than him to get elected after him. It seems foolish, you know. We can go on doing what people think is the right thing, but when it involves having these unintended consequences, like letting gangsters in, it might only be 1% of the people coming in. If it's only 1%, it should be easy to stop. You know, I think it's a little bit higher. I don't think it's a majority, but you know, you stop it and stop terrorists from coming in. It might only be 1%. It might even be less. In which case, it should be easy to do, but it should be done, because otherwise you put a weapon in this guy's hands. It's not just pragmatic though. It's just foolishness. It's just silly stupidity to just let terrorists in. It's not good for our society to let in gangsters. It's not good for our society. It's a matter of morality.